Hey guys, how's it going? Alex Scott here with TrueFire.com. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Now, chances are if you clicked on this based on the title and the thumbnail, you are somebody who is interested in home recording, home music production, and you're looking at putting together your very first setup. It's 2025. We are in a golden age of music production equipment and software. Everything is getting more and more affordable, more and more accessible. But of course, it's a huge topic. There's all kinds of pitfalls that you can fall into, all kinds of mistakes that you can make. Lord knows I've made a bunch of them myself. I've been a studio professional for 15 years. I produce records for artists. I mix records for people. I write music for video games. I do all kinds of stuff. So I've built more than a few home studios in my day. I've helped my friends build their setups, and I personally have made mistakes. I've seen people make mistakes, and so I wanted to put this video together to hopefully help a few of you out there avoid some of these missteps that you may be inclined to take. So let's go ahead and talk about the first mistake that you guys should be aware of. Now, it may sound simple, but making sure that you have adequate space to have a good recording setup is something a lot of people overlook. It's really easy to just think, oh, well, I just need a laptop and maybe a pair of headphones, maybe a microphone. I've got, already a work desk set up in my bedroom and I can just throw everything there. That may very well be the case, but there's a few things that you want to consider. The first thing is thinking a lot about what the whole goal of your studio is going to be. If you're just a solo, like singer-songwriter, maybe you play acoustic guitar and you just want to, demo your tunes, get your tunes down, record them, maybe produce them out a little bit into demos. You're not just thinking about your computer, right? You're also thinking about your microphone, your interface, preferably a pair of speakers, a pair of headphones. That's really all the gear you need, but where are you going to put your guitar? How is your guitar going to sound in the room? Is your room quiet enough, and does it sound decent enough to let you get good recordings of not just your guitar, but also maybe your voice? Is there anything else you're going to want to do in the future? Maybe you own a little egg shaker or a tambourine. Is that a space that's going to be conducive to recording that? Maybe you want to do vocals. Do you have a place that you can get your vocals nice and isolated? Do you have friends who make music? Are they ever going to want to come over and record? Is there a place for, if you want to show off your hard work to your family and friends, where's that going to happen? Having your space be easy to maintain, easy to do maintenance in, plug in your speakers, deal with your cabling, all that stuff. These are all things that you want to consider when thinking about what space you're going to choose to set up your equipment in. Okay, now my second tip is a big one, and this is probably the first thing that was in your mind when you clicked on this video, and if you're considering building your studio, it has been on your mind a whole lot lately, and that is buying too much gear or buying too little gear. Right? It's easy to go in both directions. There's so many sites and resources, whether it's review sites and forums like Gearspace and Reddit, whether it's companies like Sweetwater, where you go on their site and they say, oh, you're interested in recording. Well, you need this mic and that mic and this cable and this stand and these speakers and these headphones and this interface. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed and not really understand what all you need or don't need to purchase when you're setting up your studio. So here's how I like to break it down. Define the goals of what your studio is going to be for. Like taking our example from a moment ago, let's say you just play acoustic guitar and you're a songwriter, so you want to strum your acoustic, you want to sing, and then maybe you want to produce demos. Well, you are definitely going to need a pair of speakers, obviously, to listen to. You're going to need a pair of headphones for recording yourself. You're going to need at least one decent mic. I think one would be fine in that scenario to record both your guitar and your voice, either together or separately. You're going to need a stand for that mic, a cable for that mic, and then you are going to maybe, and this would be a maybe, and you have to think about what you want to do and define your goals, a MIDI keyboard controller like one of these. You don't even need something this fancy, but just something so that you can play around a little bit with maybe getting some drum sounds or getting some simple piano chords or something down. There's affordable and, compact options for all of these pieces of equipment, but that's a great way to break it down and say, well, what am I really trying to accomplish here and what do I need to accomplish it? Now, obviously, if you're somebody who's in a band and you've got two guitar players, a keyboard player, a lead singer, and a drummer, a bass player, you've got amps, you've got all this stuff, that setup looks a lot different. You're going to need a much bigger interface with a lot more inputs. You're going to need more microphones. You're going to need a bigger space, etc., more headphones, etc., etc. So just defining your goals really, really clearly is clutch. Now, one huge mistake that I see newcomers to home recording make is being convinced that you need to buy the best possible version of whatever the thing is. And I could talk about this for days on end. The pro audio community at large has a really bad habit of making newcomers feel like, oh, if you can't afford whatever, X, Y, or Z mic, a Neumann, a Telefunken, a Neve preamp, if you don't have these things in your studio, you can't get good recordings. And it is an out and out lie. Don't let anybody ever tell you that if your microphone is under $300 or $500 or $1,000 or $5,000, that it's not going to be good enough. It's just simply not true. Are there bad, cheap mics out there? Absolutely. There's also great cheap mics out there. One of my personal favorites is the Audio-Technica AT2020. It's $50 used, $100 new. Is it the best sounding mic I've ever used in my life? No, of course not. Pay $5,000 for a mic, it's gonna sound pretty dang good. But does that mean you're gonna get bad recordings with the AT2020? Under no circumstances. I've heard beautiful recordings captured with that mic. Same thing goes for interfaces. You can spend, $4,000 on an interface from a company like Lynx. Do you need that as a beginner? Of course not. Your $50 or $100 Focusrite, PreSonus, Behringer, whatever company, it's gonna be fine. The gear at this point has reached a standard where if you have even the cheapest stuff that is of decent quality and you can't get a good recording, you still have more to learn as a recording engineer and as a producer and as a musician, right? It has nothing to do with the gear. And anybody who accuses their vocal takes of sounding not great because of their microphone, they just have more to learn. There's no reason that this less expensive gear can't get you started and carry you through for years to come. Obviously, at some point, you might want to think about upgrading and investing more in pieces that you really care about and use all the time. But don't fall into the crutch of letting other people tell you that your gear isn't good enough. Now, getting back to the topic of overbuying gear, I have a really simple rule that I stick to this day, and I call it the 3-month rule. If I have a piece of equipment in my studio and I don't touch it for 3 months, for 90 days,
get out!
It's gone. I ditch it, I put it up on Reverb, I sell it, and I get something that I think will be more useful. Make a clear plan for the gear that you know you'll need, and if you buy a few things that you don't end up using, it's okay. Just check them up on Reverb, check them up on eBay, put them up on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. Somebody out there will grab them off your hands, and you'll make a little bit of cash back. Now, on the flip side of all of this, underbuying is a problem as well. Another situation you don't want to end up in is sitting there going, oh man, I want to record vocals, but all I have is this mic holder that clips onto my desk or something, and I want to go into a different room or a closet or something to record my vocals, and I can't do that. Make your plan, define your goals, and make sure that you have everything that you need, including, this is my final point, ancillaries. Everything needs a cable. Most things need a stand of some kind. USB cables, power cables, microphone cables, instrument cables, straps, extra strings, picks, capos, very similar to guitar playing in a lot of ways. There's a million accessories, and a lot of them are super, super, super useful. So you just always want to make sure that you have those ancillary items in mind as well to make sure that you don't hit a huge roadblock when you're getting set up and go, oh, geez, I didn't think about power cables for my speakers and I bought them on Craigslist and they didn't come with any or something like that. So again, all this can be avoided by just defining your goals, making a really clear list and a clear plan, and executing on it. Okay, that's a whole lot about buying gear, but honestly, that's one of the main things that people worry about when they're putting together a studio. But another thing that people don't worry about as much is acoustics, and acoustics are everything. Now, what do I mean when I say acoustics? I mean the actual sound of the space that you're working with, right? Whether it's a bedroom or a spare, living room area or an office in your house, whatever it may be. Thinking about the acoustics is really important, and there are a lot of circumstances where, again, going back to our example of you're a songwriter, you play acoustic and you sing, and you're going, well, should I have two mics, one that's really for my guitar and one that's for my vocal? I would say you could do that. You could also take that $100 or $200 you're going to spend on the second mic and spend it on acoustic treatment. Now, there's a million ways, and I want to do a whole video on the million ways that you can treat a space for dirt cheap. Hanging blankets on walls is great. Using closets full of clothes for vocal isolation, for kind of a faux vocal booth, if you will, is a great trick. There's a lot of ways to approach it. I don't want to get into it here because it's a huge topic, but suffice to say that making sure that your room is nice and quiet, making sure you don't have those echoes and reflections that plague a lot of normal rooms that are not acoustically designed particularly well. This is all stuff that you really want to think about. But Much like the gear, you can spend thousands of dollars on bass traps and specialized panels and quadratic diffusers and all this stuff. You don't need any of that either. There's a lot of great ways that you can make your space sound really, really nice for next to no money using stuff you may already have. Acoustics are just so important and one of the most oft overlooked things when setting up your first home studio. Okay, now fourth topic for discussion. I touched on this a little bit when we were talking about gear, but suffice to say, the internet is not always right. Now, what do I mean by that? You're watching this on the internet right now, right? And honestly, this video kind of falls under that category. I'm doing my best to give you good advice, but cross-reference everything. There's so many sites out there like Reddit, like Gearspace, two sites I spend way too much time on personally, where people love to lend advice. There's some great wisdom out there and you can learn a lot and you can give yourself a huge leg up by really studying some of these resources. What works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for somebody else. Everybody's journey is a little bit different. You never know what people's motivations are for things. It's a great resource. It's also really great at convincing you that you need to spend more money than you actually do. It's always great at convincing you that whatever you just bought, even though you did all the research, isn't good enough or is wrong. So internet's not always right. Take everything you read with a grain of salt and just try not to get lost in that rabbit hole of Reddit thread after Reddit thread or thread after thread on Gearspace or any of these places, because it's just, we want to spend our time making music, not worrying about X, Y, or Z, right? So internet's not always right. Now, finally, and this piggybacks very nicely, what's the whole point of having a studio? Is it to mess around with plugging things in and testing things? No. Is it to spend all your time arguing with strangers on the internet? No. It is about making music. It is about having fun. It's about furthering our craft. It's about being passionate and creative and enriching our lives through the power of technology. The number one mistake is getting bogged down with anything other than that. We don't buy gear just to look at it, right? We don't worry about all these stands just and cables and all these ancillaries to play with them. We buy this gear to have fun with it. And so hopefully through some of these tips and just keeping some of these things in mind, you're gonna set yourself up for short and long-term success in staying focused, in being able to create very fluidly and just getting your stuff up and running and starting to do the thing that you really want to do, working on those songs, working on your playing, and creating great music to share with friends and family and fans. It's a beautiful process. I love my studio time. I love my gear. It's taken a long time for me to get to the setup that I have. I've had huge setups. I've had tiny setups. I've had setups that fit in a duffel bag. I've had setups that need 1,000 square feet to even run correctly. Everything in between. They've all been fun, but my setup these days, you can see, is pretty slimmed down and pretty compact. And it is that way because I now have the fewest possible barriers between me and creating the kind of music that I want to create, making great music for my clients, making great music for myself. That's the whole point here. Making music, having fun, getting better at our craft. Anything else is a word that I won't use here on YouTube. So that about does it. There's 5 helpful tips, hopefully helpful tips for some of you out there if you're looking at getting your first home studio set up. Hey, if you're interested in learning more about music production, mixing, mastering, as well as playing guitar, playing bass, a bunch of other instruments, head over to TrueFire.com. Wonderful, wonderful site. I have a bunch of courses on there about playing bass guitar, about mixing, mastering, music production. We have some of the greatest guitar players in the world with courses on there, guys like Tommy Emmanuel, guys like Eric Johnson. It's an incredible resource. You can either buy courses individually or you can subscribe to our all access membership. Links will be down in the description. It's really a fantastic resource and value if you are interested in making music. If you enjoyed this, please give the video a like. It really helps the algorithm know who to recommend it to. Click subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Be sure to click the notification bell as well to be kept up to date with the channel. Again, my name is Alex Scott with TrueFire.com. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.